Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Bennington. I'm Chuck Bennington, and I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to, but I do know that I love my son, and I want him to have a better, faster, smoother journey through the trials and tribulations of life than I had myself. So here's my documented journey, stories, lessons, and experiences that are really for you, buddy. I love you. Thank you so much for listening to another conversation with Chuck Bennington. Hope it was enjoyable for you. Hope there was some value and some benefit in it. Maybe even had a laugh or two. Even though these are primarily for me and Liam, we sure love to help a friend in need because it's a friend indeed. So if there was some piece of it that was good, please feel free to share it with somebody else and pay it forward. If you think what we're doing is rad and you want to support it, please just like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. Appreciate you, dudes.
And welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Chuck. I had to think about the podcast name then for a minute. Got a few on the boil. Welcome, of course, to the man himself, Mr. Chuck Bennington. But today we are also joined again by Mr. Drew Zaro, who's going to be a regular on the podcast sort of monthly to help us dig through money stuff because that's a big thing in people's lives and lessons we wish we had learned earlier. So how are you, gentlemen?
Doing swimmingly.
Swimmingly.
Same. It's that time of year where in the business world things are needing to be buttoned up tight for the end of the year. So kind of cross the T's and dot the I's.
Yeah, everyone wants everything done by the end of the year, but they're all kind of in holiday mode and don't really.
Everyone's emergency is my emergency now.
Yeah. That's probably an excellent segue as well into today's topic, talking about people leaving things till it's critical or the last minute, or they realize, oh, I don't have enough money to get me through. My life goals.
Just laughing because she's like, dude, it's the same thing for me, because she's got all the patients that they're like, holy shit, it's Christmas and New Year's and I look like a fucking battle toad. We should probably do something about this ASAP.
And I should have booked the appointment a month ago, but now I'm ringing.
Right, it is the nature of like humans with their behaviors, like.
But you can still fit me in.
Fucking for sure, too little, too late.
Yeah, they're like, you can't squeeze me in. You don't have an appointment for 2 months. I'm like, yeah. You looked like 2 months ago. What's wrong with you?
I do like the fact that you two are kind of matching today as well.
What was that, Lisa?
You two are kind of matching today with your checks and stripes.
We're not kind of matching. We're very much so.
Yeah.
They're both from J. Crew, but they're different plaids.
Right. It's nice. I like it. And it's people expecting then that somebody else can solve the problem. So I guess, Drew, in your industry, people will come to you and go, well, I need money to retire. And, well, when are you going to retire? Oh, 2 years. Okay, this is a problem. But you solve it for me. You're the money man. And they often don't like to hear that hard conversation like, no, there's no appointment, or this can't be solved in, this is a lifetime problem, but we can't have a miracle cure for it so quickly.
Yeah.
Same as fitness. Someone comes to the gym and goes, yeah, I'm doing a race next week. I need to be fit. I'm preparing for my wedding. It's like, this is a lifetime of behavior that we're going to try and change in 6 months.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
Yeah. So for the context of like the purpose of the show and then my relationship with Drew, I think it's, what are the behaviors and the patterns that people don't work to create and establish for themselves that consistently leave them in a bad place? I think I would like to dedicate at least one episode that we talk about the idea of identity and money. And a lot of that's related, the psychology of money is very tied to the identity that we have with ourselves because of the stories that we tell ourselves, but at least to build a better reference for, the idea of younger versions of ourselves, for me expressed through Liam, for you, Connor and Olivia, but maybe we start there since we're going to do this recurring, but what are at least some of the conversations that you wish that people would have had with you about finances earlier, regardless of what those views, thoughts, ideas, and outcomes would be, but not to have money be this incidental thing that kind of floats through the abstract of adult life, where as a kid you're aware that finances and money are a thing. But at least for me, until I really deliberately pursued financial education on my own, I was just missing a lot of money talks from people that I feel like should have been having better money talks with me, that if I had those talks in a way that made something congruent, adult life would have already been like very accomplished financially because time would be working in our favor rather than against us. So I know that's a lot of words, but like,
Yeah.
dude, what are some things that you wish that people talk with their kids about with money through the lens of like, what are things that you wish people would have talked with you about with money?
I think there's obviously, I think, 1,000 things in what you just said that you can unpack and extrapolate it further to just one-off conversations. But I think as you're talking, I try to kind of bubble up to the top, like two big themes that for me, I wish I had these conversations earlier in my life. I was lucky enough maybe to just, I guess, glean them from the way that I grew up. But I know that not everyone grew up the way that I grew up. And I'm from a white middle-class suburban home in the United States. So I'm about as lucky as it gets being a male, white United States citizen. I know I have it really good and I'm really lucky in that regard. But I think the two things that should be discussed more and they should be thoroughly understood before someone maybe even reaches high school is the thought of saving money and what that actually means and the purpose of it. And then the thought of, or the concept of debt and how polarizing it feels, I think, in teenage years and in your 20s, where it's like you're either, just racking up debt because you're trying to get by, or you also have the crowd that's like, debt's horrible, don't ever touch debt, you shouldn't have a credit card, don't take out an auto loan, buy a used car, whatever that might be, pinch all the pennies you can. But there's obviously, like everything, spectrum and levels to the conversation of savings and the conversation of debt. For me, understanding that saving money is extremely important, but it's not just saving money to save money. It's saving money with a purpose. And I've learned that in my adult years. And before I became a financial advisor, it was always something that I tried to kind of figure out, like, how does this make sense? I always thought, I'll get paid. I'll pay what I need to pay. And then I'll, whatever's left over at the end of the month, cool, there's my savings for the month. I never calculated how much, what percentage I was saving per month. I never had a goal in order to meet it. And if some months I went over and actually spent more than I earned, oops, whatever, we'll try again next month. And then all of a sudden it's 10 years later and you're doing the same thing 12 months a year, or, however often you get paid. There's no lessons learned. First of all, you probably didn't pay yourself, your future self is what I'm talking about, meaning your 65-year-old version of yourself. And I say 65 because it's generally accepted as about the retirement age that most people take, whether you're going through a formal retirement and you're taking in a pension, cashing out a 401k, or maybe you're just deciding, I don't want to work as much and I'm going to go from 40 to 50 hours a week. I'm going to work 10 hours a week and I'm going to do that when I want. And maybe it's not even doing your primary job, but taking the concept of saving for yourself, for your future, so you don't have to be worrying about, well, can I retire at 65, 70? And scary enough, there's plenty of people that are having those conversations after age 70. Well, when can I actually retire here? And then how many people do you see in the grocery store or doing kind of menial, easy roles in their later years? That's probably not what they wanted to do. So just understanding that, there's a purpose to saving money, not just because your grandmother told you to put money in an envelope and not spend it ever, but it's because it needs to align with your goals and it needs to align with your desired trajectory of life, whether you meet that trajectory or not. So, when you're 15, 20, 25, 30, if your target for saving every paycheck is 2%, 5%, it might seem like at all helpful. But we can parallel that with the same conversation that we have when someone comes into a CrossFit gym and we look at their extremely immature squat. And we know, because we've seen it 100 or 1,000 times, if you just keep doing the reps, I promise you that squat's going to look great in a couple of years. So we start compounding that 2% savings rate, but then we also make that person healthier. And all of a sudden they're saving 4%, 8%, 10%. Oh, they have a great month. They're saving 20, 25%. They're doing the right things. We're building the good habits, but all of a sudden have that conversation when they're 65 years old. It's not even a conversation that needs to be had. Instead of asking, when can I retire? It's asking, okay, how much do I get to spend when I retire next year? Which is a much different conversation. I've had both conversations with different types of clients. The other concept that I think it needs to be very much understood, and this probably happens inside the home, it needs to happen at school, and it needs to be kind of touched on everywhere, is just the healthy usage of debt, understanding what debt is. That's not horrible. That's actually probably the number one way that the richest people on earth got rich, is because they use debt and they leverage that debt to put themselves in better positions by borrowing money from somebody else to invest it elsewhere, pay that original lender back, and you keep the profits. And it's as simple as that. I'm not talking about when we go, leverage a bunch of debt and rack ourselves up $1,000 a month car payment that we can't afford. I promise you, unless it's a very unique make and model of car, that's not going to come back around and pay you at the end of the day. But what I am talking about, is using opportunities. Some would, you could classify the mortgage, a housing mortgage, into healthy debt usage. Can I get into a home that I can hopefully add value to? And then over the years that I own it, it appreciates in value. And then when I sell it, if and when I do, I make a profit on it. Or even better than that, or different than that, maybe, is I can pass this on to my kids or my grandkids when I'm done living in it or when I pass away. And therefore, we've just passed on wealth throughout generations. And that right there, I think, is the biggest reason I think savings and understanding savings and debt and healthy debt usage is extremely important, is because it allows you the ability to really find momentum in building generational wealth. And I know that generational wealth is one of those concepts that to some might seem completely irrelevant and unnecessary because they're thinking about just them surviving the week, the month, the year. But if you could take a step back and think, what did my parents do to get me where I'm at? And as small or as big as that might seem to some people, the steps that people before us took has a tremendous amount of carryover to the amount of steps that we're going to be able to take in our life. And I realize that personally, the steps that my family took, my parents were very much savers. They didn't use debt very much. They didn't use credit cards. Went a couple of vacations a year, maybe one or two. But my parents taught me how to save. I didn't know how to use debt appropriately when I was a teenager or a young adult. I figured that out over the stages of things. And I got lucky in a couple situations where I was able to, buy a house and sell a house and make a profit on that a couple times. And that was great. But experiencing a lesson to learn it is a lot longer of a process than trying to, take someone else's steps that they've already put in place and just walking over them and learning the next lesson. So savings and kind of debt usage would be my biggest themes to want to relate to the young person, wherever they might be at on earth,
How are you? So I think savings is like a pretty simple, easy construct to build an elementary idea around. And it works in nature's favor, right? You're like, hey, buddy, you see how that squirrel's collecting all those nuts and shoving them in the tree? He's saving those nuts for when there's less nuts and he's still hungry.
Yep.
Credit, especially in like favorable debt structure and like favorable debt utilization, I'm not sure the best way that I have to help Liam understand that. And I think that, Liam in and of himself creates, almost like this avatar of just somebody with a low base level of education and information around any given topic. So it's like, it's been a really helpful way for me to find better ways to frame things for, him, but also a ton of people that like operate in a lot of naivety and ignorance around like debt, especially. I think debt's a really difficult thing. Well, not that I know even based on, Tony and I's conversations and affiliate with other business owners that still carry very myopic viewpoints of debt is just like debt bad.
Yeah.
Debt no good. Be like, well, maybe not. I mean, it's a tool. But I have found that as a consistently difficult tool, at least for me, to explain at a low level, like beneficial use and structure. It's an easy thing to like talk at somebody about, but I haven't really found a consistent thing that somebody's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I've tried to think. There's a lot of ways you can try to explain it to somebody. The one that's kind of stuck with me is, my brother is a very hands-on person. He can do anything and everything you could imagine, with your hands, construction, auto mechanic stuff that he just picks up on it like that. In the mechanic world, at least from my understanding, from his experience when he was younger, he doesn't do it any longer. But, a mechanic doesn't just go into business and become a mechanic. And even further past that, a mechanic just doesn't get a job at an auto mechanic shop and just start fixing vehicles. They can, but there's one critical thing that they need to fix vehicles, and that's tools and equipment. a lot of times, if you want to kind of blossom as a mechanic, you're going to eventually have to buy your own tools, and you're going to have to get your own equipment. Some companies will literally lend you tools and you pay them back over years and years and years. So what you're doing is you're leveraging the cost of those tools. You're borrowing on that person's essential credit so you can carry out your skill, make money. You pay them back for the tools and you keep the extra money. But yeah, you're right. There's no easy way to frame this for an individual that maybe doesn't have experience with it. Although I would argue that healthy credit usage is a skill that one would take on or try to use at a more mature part of their financial literacy progression. Meaning, if you're very elementary into trying to understand money, you don't really need to be playing with credit. And leveraging anything is not going to benefit you. There's a good chance that very quickly you'll get yourself into a hole that will be very hard to take yourself out of, especially in the short term, which will, not only cause that financial stress, but emotional, mental stress too, which can be just as inhibiting as almost anything else.
Oh, it's worse.
Yes.
Yeah. It is worse because, right, like you had mentioned earlier, like debt is one of the tools that the most, wealthy and successful people in the world use on a regular basis to increase said status. They're only able to do that because of the mental and emotional relationship that they have with debt. Otherwise, like, you would never have the balls, the brains, whatever combination it would be to like put your name on that dotted line.
Yep.
Like if Vanessa and I weren't willing to entertain using debt as a tool, like these doors would not be open. We would not be off the ground. The best that, I came up with to try to help Liam understand it, I think I was just like a little bit ahead of the timeline of capacity. And it was with his little hot chocolate stand. We bought the stand, we bought the supplies, we bought everything in advance to give him the ability to use our money to create a tool for him to generate revenue and profit with. Then I was like, well, I would be the biggest dick dad ever if I was like, great, buddy, you made $168 or whatever. Be like, I'm gonna need like half right now.
Yeah.
So I think like there's something.
And I know where you live.
Right. There's something to the structure of like, being able to. That was the best that we come up with is, to use it to actually give him legitimately a tool to produce income and wealth by using our money to get there faster.
Right.
He's not quite 5 yet. So like probably not the level of conversation that like we're able to have with it, but it's different to be able to use something like experiential learning because it makes sense real fast. But just as a conversation construct, at least I'm anticipating in advance, based on the number of people that I've met, relationships I've had, debt is a really difficult conversation to have with people that just don't understand money as like a game, a tool, an idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you spent your whole life being told debt is bad, money is finite, like, you got to live within your means, and they're the lessons that are passed down from, the older generations who had to live a certain way because, there wasn't the abundance we have now. But even understanding the constructs like Liam's going to understand money's not finite. I can go and create money. I can go and create. There was no money. Now I've just created it. It's, and understanding those concepts that it's not living within your means, but it's being responsible and creating those means if there's something that you're pushing towards.
Dude, it's a slippery slope. Yeah, no, go speak on it, Drew. Go for it.
I think it's funny. I've recently just talked to someone else about that same concept of what you were saying, Lisa, is we live in a different age than our parents lived. And so you get to create a product or a service if you have the ability to think up a product or service that people are willing to pay you for. And that money does become infinite depending on to which level you want to scale it. You're not going to find any shortage of humans as potential customers on this planet. So there's that. It's, so your inhibitions become how much does it cost to get it going? And so right back into, do I need to leverage anything in order to get into this? Meaning, and when I say, do we need to leverage, I'm speaking, do I need to get a line of credit? Do I need to borrow money to get this thing going? Some people it's yeah, and some people it's no. And some people are extremely creative, but having the understanding of what credit is and credit does, I think allows that next maturity level to happen of, okay, well, if I want to create a product or service because I want to create my own life, my own lifestyle, my own business, then understanding credit is it's critical to being able to.
Dude, I would say that like that is a piece of like, if you are on a path to accumulate more wealth sooner rather than later, easier rather than harder, I think you hit a brick wall of like, you've got to be okay going the long, slow, hard road, or you're going to need to use debt as a tool.
Yep.
I think it just like there's an absolute stopping point for most people. And you know, I know that for a lot of people, like the first narrative rewrite they really have is like the mortgage. And you know, we ran into an interesting piece with Liam the other day because we were trying to explain us needing to work, us trying to like, you know, generate income and revenue. And he's like, well, you know, for what? And I was like, well, for literally everything that your life touches consumes dollars at a rate that before I had a kid, I would have never imagined dollars.
The pants that you're taking a crap in, son, I've paid for them.
You're like a wood chipper for $20 bills, bro. And so we're talking, you know, the house, the cars, our phones. He's like, yeah, but you already have a house and cars and phone. And it's like, okay, touche, because in his brain, everything is operated out of like the structure of savings. Like I save my dollars by doing work, trading time, energy for money, and then like I can go and buy the thing I want. And so it's trying to help him understand, well, we bought the things that we wanted with somebody else's money, and now we got to pay them back. And these are bigger things that cost more money that take a longer time. And I don't know how much is like him placating me. And he's like, yeah, I don't want to fucking talk. Let's talk about dinosaurs and like listen to some music again. But
your life sucks, Dad.
Yeah, he's like, boring. You should just wild out whatever you want, whenever you want, and somebody else should pay for it. And like, I agree. That would be way better. No, I think I didn't have a lot of like really deliberate, intentional conversations about money when I was a kid. You know, it was very much so like, you should save money. How much money? In what sequence of my finances? Like, for how long? How should I understand what an appropriate amount is and isn't? Like, how long am I going to be saving this money for? At what point do I not really need to continue to worry about like saving, but doing something else with it? Just none of it, man.
And you know, as I remember conversations were about you're wasting money, like you're going, you know, to you know, too many concerts and things like that. I'm like, yeah, but they're experiences. They're, you know, I've got a life that I've lived, you know, and even from like talking to my mother, having the construct of being able to not work for somebody else and create your own destiny. She doesn't even get her head around the fact that that's an actual job. It's still a job, like, but you're not tied to somebody else's. Yeah, you're not, you know, because she'll just say, "Oh, tough life you've got." It's like, well, actually, yeah, I work hard, but it looks different to going 9 to 5, which that generation again is so used to. You know, you're limited by what someone else is going to give you and what they determine your worth should be in exchange for your effort. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, well, the only thing that limits me is my effort. So I'm not constrained by somebody else's idea, but they just can't get that construct. And then it's about, well, I've got money, I've saved money. Now I want to have some nice things or some big experiences. Well, now you're wasting money. So then there's that other side of it as well from that.
That's a great point. That's a conversation that's really hard to have for people on both sides of the fence. And I think that you could paint the spectrum from someone who's extremely carefree and someone who's extremely robotic with their money. Neither of those people, at the end of the day, are really going to be that fun to hang around, because that person carefree with their money, they don't have any money because they're carefree with their money. They might have money, but you have no idea where that's going to be in the short-term future. But the person that's also robotic, also probably not super fun to hang around, because they're not going to concerts. Because you know why? Well, they didn't save this much money this month and they have a retirement to get to in 22 years. And now we can't go to a concert because that'll throw everything off track. So most of us reside in the middle part of that spectrum somewhere. And some of us are more carefree, some of us are more robotic, and that's okay. I think with anything, you need to have a taste of everything, a taste of both ends of that spectrum, maybe, to figure out where you fit happily on that. But I think that having a purpose for every dollar is really an interesting concept to kind of try to think about. And I guess some financial advisors and some financial planners would literally mean this purposefully and intentfully as like every dollar, don't spend more than you should be spending on this or that or the other thing. But more importantly than that is if you got paid on the first of the month and you put your we'll say 15% into savings account, and then you threw 5% into your vacation account, and you paid all your bills, everything's all set, then what's the deal what's the big deal if your discretionary dollars that you set aside for the month, we'll say that's $500, and you spent $450 on concert tickets, and you went to a concert? Well, if you stayed inside your discretionary budget that you've already planned for, then there's no impact on it. And in reality, you actually just made your life better, because now you're motivated to be like, oh, that was really fun. If I could do that like once a quarter, that'd be even better. So now I'm gonna actually work my ass off so I can make more money, so I can make sure those experiences continue to happen, because that was actually what I felt like made me feel like I was living. Right. And so all of us have different experiences that are like that, but figuring out what those things are that make you tick are not the things that you're like, awesome, cool, I know what they are now, I'm going to put them on a shelf. So when I'm 66, I don't have a job anymore, I can do them. But when you're 66,
I'm going to go to so many fucking concerts in my 70s,
bro.
Yeah.
I mean, just let's be very clear. You can definitely, and you should definitely continue to go to concerts in your 70s. But if you're waiting that long, the bands that you're going to see, they are probably dead, maybe. Or they're going to be very cringy, but the great part is they'll be inexpensive at that point. So good on you. But I always tell my clients, and I think it's a great thing to try to wrap your head around, is you have to reward yourself, but don't reward yourself from the money that is for the future version of yourself. From your retirement account, or from your savings, or from your vacation fund, or your honeymoon, wedding, whatever it might be. But like taking your discretionary money that you've already planned for and reward yourself with it. If you have 85% of your discretionary money left at the end of the month because you were too busy with everything to spend it, okay. But if you were just like looking for every reason not to spend your discretionary money, then you might actually be doing yourself a disservice, and you're going to find yourself in a spot where you don't understand what it is that you're working for, what you're living for. And I always remind my clients that you have to make sure that you're taking care of the you now as well as the you in the future. And that's a hard balance to come and find reconciliation with. But I think with the right conversations with the right people, most people can find that happy balance.
And I think, a lot of that, looking at weighing experiences in the present versus the future, thinking about savings here and now versus what it affords me down the road, and like that as a tool, all three of those have the thread of opportunity costs that run through them. Like what do you get and what do you have to give up in order to get that thing? So how are you, like, as a dad, talking to Connor and Olivia about the idea of opportunity cost? Like whether that's with finances or food or fitness, like how are you helping them understand that as a construct?
Well, I mean, I'll give a really good example. So my son's about to be 13 here in a few weeks. So what comes along with the package of an almost 13-year-old is pre-puberty and angst and emotions, and they're all just a bunch of idiots at that age. And that's what we're dealing with right now. In a fit of emotion, about a month ago, maybe he threw and broke his phone. And so I'm divorced. So he's with his mother half the time and he's with me half the time. And I bought my two kids phones when we got divorced because I wanted to make sure that I could maintain communication when I thought it was appropriate. So he's had the phone for 2 years. It was probably about time to replace it anyways, but he threw it, broke his phone in a fit of anger after a conversation that him and I had, which, his reaction is one thing. But in terms of the money part of it, he broke an expensive item that I paid money for. As we went down that road, and I let him kind of lead the way in terms of, what do you think should happen? And some of his early thoughts were like, I'm fine, I don't need a phone. And then I reminded him of the opportunity cost that came with not having a phone. And one of those things was, okay, well, I live in an apartment building right now. And he takes the trash out for some of the elderly people in the building. He does it for $1. They give him a tip. And he usually, almost every person gives him at least $5. Sometimes he brings their mail up to their room, he gives them $20. So like over the course of a month between him and his sister, they can bring in between $100, $200, maybe more. And so I reminded him, hey, you don't have a phone. No one's going to be able to tell you that they need their trash taken out of their mail. You're not going to be able to make money now. And then you could see his face is like, your opportunity cost for you not wanting to go ahead and replace this purposeful item in your life. And it was also very difficult for me because I don't want him to feel reliant on a cell phone. I think that's the most hard part of this lesson learned, but I'm like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. But he really took that to heart of like, and then obviously, you know, he can no longer text his friends, make plans with his friends, set up time to play PlayStation online with his friends via text. And so he could very much realize the missed opportunities he was having just because he made a poor decision. So us trying to reconcile, how do we figure that out? And what we did is he just had to pay for his phone, and hundreds of dollars that he had to pay for me. I didn't feel happy having to take money from my son, but I was like, you know what? This is a lesson learned. He doesn't know this, but I'm just going to simply take the money that he paid me. I'm going to put it into a Roth IRA account, and that's going to grow. And then when he's 65, he's going to be like, holy shit. But, you know, in the long and short of it, the opportunity costs weighed heavy on him once he realized, you know, what he was potentially missing out on.
And that's a lesson he will take forward for, you know, when every time he looks at not just that phone, but any phone and items now, it's like, well, a momentary lapse is going to cost me way more than just a new screen or a new whatever. Like,
yep.
How do I, you know, apply that to all the other things in my life?
Yeah. So, and the long and short of it, it's one of those things that I think, again, that lesson happens further down that line of maturity as someone's kind of growing up in finances. And I don't mean in finances like you're in the industry, but I mean, when you're growing up as it relates to money, is that's one of the lessons that you have to learn is opportunity cost, because some things, you know, whether you're going to pay someone to come and landscape your yard so you can spend more time with your family, you know, that's you weighing opportunity cost. What's the cost of me taking 3 hours out of my Saturday to do my yard versus paying someone else to do it for me? It's a hard lesson to learn, but I think that's the biggest thing in adult life that I think as a generation are figuring out is we're willing to outsource certain things, which creates opportunity for other people because they can take the things that you want to outsource and they'll do them for you for a cost for that product or service. And I think it just speaks to exactly what is possible for the future generations. And as you guys were talking, you know, we think back to our parents and our mothers, for the most part, were welcome in the workplace. And my mom worked for the most part of my childhood. And they look at what we do and it's like, what's weird? You're going on a podcast today, or you're doing social media stuff. Like, how do you make money off that? That doesn't make sense. That's not a 9 to 5, but just as foreign as that is to them, their mothers weren't even welcomed in the workforce, right? Their grandmothers.
What do you mean you're going to work? You're a lady.
You know, you're like, you're in the house, you take care of the house and the kids and everything. And so it makes me think, what is the generation after my kids look like? What are they doing for opportunity? And how does that look in order to earn money? And the biggest, I think, picture of all of this is being able to learn that you get to kind of pave your own road based off of what the environment looks like, the earning environment looks like. And the earning environment in 2022 going into 2023 is, I don't think it's ever been truer that you can truly be anything that you want to be on this earth. Obviously, there's a lot of governmental things that can hold you back, political things that can hold you back, depending on where you're from. But there's more people ever that have the opportunity to do whatever they want in life because the environment for making money is more wide open than it's ever been.
Yeah. The internet and the ability to have everyday access for literally anybody to the tools of scale is really lost on people.
Yeah.
Like really, really, really lost on people. Like, you can shoot a video and put it on YouTube. The fact that exists blows my mind still, because so many people don't understand how many like bridges and barriers had to collapse to get to that point. Like, you know, you've got a high definition camera in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to easily upload to somebody else's server. You don't have to get your own server. That was a thing for a long time. Or like, have you guys ever had to do like old school FTP uploads?
Yes.
Just like you go straight to the YouTube app and just upload. You're done.
Yep.
Distribution. You don't have to have like a TV station to syndicate your show.
Just need a hashtag.
Like, yeah, like it is unbelievable. And there's so many little pieces that the cohesive network of tools, resources, pieces of software, pieces of hardware, like everything that is presently available is absolutely mind-boggling if you step away and look at, you know, Remove any one of those items and a whole lot of that ecosystem collapses. But spoiler alert, like those things will never be removed.
Right.
You're never going to go back to like a phone without a camera in it. Internet speed will only continue to advance in one direction until like, you know, it abruptly halts and the world is thrown back to like sticks and stones because like we human and got real stupid at scale. But like,
and the other thing
about like, how do we teach some of these lessons to our kids in an effective way when the economic landscape and like earning capacity could continue to shift and reasonably will shift further and further in that direction. With like 8.5 billion people that are on the planet, even a fraction of a single percent like still creates a viable enough audience for like anything. You're like, I want to sell NFTs of people eating popsicles with their feet. Cool. You could probably make $1 million next month at marketing and you knew how to find that crowd. But like, it's a weird place to live. As a parent, like knowing how much things have changed from when I was a kid and my parents raised me with not all of the money conversations that I wish that I would have had. And as hard as I am trying to think about setting Liam up with like, you know, the right set of beliefs. And dude, I love that, you know, as a practice, you guys set out Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money. That is a fucking on point book that I think everybody needs to read. I think that everybody needs to understand that humans are innately, as we are wired, bad with money. It does not fit within our tool set of like evolution. Evolution moved us through social evolution a whole lot faster than biological evolution.
Yeah.
And even really smart people with tons of education, information, and resources around like finances and money, they still make catastrophically bad decisions over and over and over again because like humans are bad with money by nature. We have to fight really hard to learn better habits and behaviors.
Yeah. And I think to kind of wrap it all into that first question is, you know, you look at how can I possibly make money in this day and age is, like I said, you just need to develop a product or a skill, right? And you might need to leverage credit in order to do that, right? Whether that is, you know what, I got to borrow $1,000 so I can go get my CrossFit level 1. I know if I get this many hours, I'll be able to pay that back within, 6 months working at my gym. But that might be the first step for someone to, again, go ahead and start developing that coach's, that addiction to coaching that they have. And then, maybe it grows from there. But at some point, somewhere along the line, you're going to have to use credit, and understanding how to use it smartly is really the best way to navigate life, because you're going to have to do it at some point. And I think that the other piece, saving your money. The one thing that I would leave with people just generally to think is, save what you can save, pay. And by save, I mean, putting money towards things that have a purpose to them. Understanding that everyone's different and you also don't know what's coming down the pipeline for you. Having that intent to save for your future self, save for your current self, put things towards goals you have, putting money towards debt that you already currently have. Those are things that are going to help you understand. And just like the air squat, or just like getting more veggies on your plate, it's going to take a lot of repetitions to get it right. But I promise you, once you feel that you have it right and you feel like it's an inherent, easily accomplishable thing for you to do, you're going to question how it's possible that you lived any other way before that. And that will only make you healthier too. I think it's funny looking at like people like Chuck and other people in the fitness space. He just recently, this past year, I think you and Vanessa did like 1 muscle up a day for a month, right? Like that's kind of,
we're still doing it more often than not. But yeah,
it's crazy to think, because
we started it in May. We started it in May last year, potentially. Yeah. I mean, and I think that it's really important if you look at trying to build a better relationship with savings. And this is what we're trying to get with Liam. It's about the intention and the effort more than the outcome. Because if you can focus on the intention and the effort, you will inevitably end up with a good outcome. But if you are focusing on the outcome, you will never stick with it long enough to intentionally like put the effort in. Because you're like, I saved X% and like, that's all. Not only do I like not have any fucking fun this month, I got like $100. So even if I wanted to like have fun next month, it would still super suck. And you're like, yep. Keep going.
Yeah.
Shut up. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Don't look back
Yeah.
in like 30 days. Like you've got to be able to curate the vision to look back in 30 years and think, you know, if this is where I want to end up, what are the inevitable things that I must do? I must start doing them.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's
it's like eating broccoli and water, isn't it? It's like the more times you eat that, and drink that, the better you get to your result. Like no one really wants to do it initially, but once you start doing it every day and being intentional, so rather than just going, well, here's my income in and just whatever's left is left, it is that intentional saving, which I think is a concept that a lot of people don't think about. It's like, all right, I'm going to save 15% straight off the top. That's going into an account. And being intentional and deliberate is better than just, well, whatever's left is left. Well, that doesn't work.
You know, not only does that not work very well fiscally and behaviorally, like it doesn't give you the chance to reinforce what we're trying to get out of all of it anyway. And, you know, Drew had spoken earlier about, you know, the people that are robotic with their finances, great, because, you know, like the plan is fine, but you're a miserable prick. So I don't know that that really works for anybody, yourself included. You have to have some, like, you know, what we're working on with Liam, because we realized it with ourselves and we've seen it play out 1,000 times. And it's the same in fitness, nutrition, finances, because they're all like just behavioral. There has to be the ability to taste the carrot on the stick. It cannot be just chasing the carrot. And like, I am super guilty of that. And that was a big thing for, you know, Vanessa with me. She's like, you know, you can buy some fucking shoes. You know, like you don't need to still have clothes from high school. Like you're in your fucking mid-30s. I don't know, man. I like the shirt, paid for. It's good. Doesn't have any holes. It's fine. Like
it's running fine.
Yeah.
I don't like that shirt.
And right, like, you know, that is a difficult, awkward, like, you know, dance to figure out. So you need to figure out like what is the value structure that you can speak to reward yourself along the way. The best answer that is universal is like rewarding the behavior, rewarding the action. That's so hard for humans to do. Because the minute we have a bad day, like all of a sudden we are quick to negate and erase that pride for ourselves. Like I feel good because I know that I made the right decision. When you're having a bad day, like the feeling of making the right decision about like, you know, saving some otherwise minuscule piece of your income, you're like, fuck that. Yeah. I need some retail therapy. I'm gonna ball out. I'm gonna do something big and dumb because like I need to make myself feel better.
There's a lot to be said. Obviously, the power of compounding is something that you hear a lot in the finance space, but take that outside of the finance space and it becomes extremely palatable and understandable. You take it to the CrossFit gym with the air squat. That's an easy example. But you know, my past life where I was in the Marine Corps, when you look at Marine Corps boot camp, it's 13 weeks long. It's funny to think about what I did day to day in the Marine Corps over those 13 weeks was so stupid. Like it was you wake up at whatever 5 o'clock in the morning, and as soon as you wake up, you go to the bathroom, you shower along with the other 75, you know, recruits that are in your platoon, and then you clean the entire squad bay. And that was already clean, but we're cleaning it again. But over the course of those, you know, 13 weeks, what you end up with is you end up with a mind that settles for nothing less than best effort. And hopefully having the best product. But like Chuck said, you don't always get to have a say in that. But the power of compounding with saving, with having healthy debt, or just a general good relationship with money will put you in a spot where, you know that, things will go wrong at times, things will go right at times, but your good habits have been there to set yourself up with a great foundation of what you can do. And this is I think the most important thing that most people listening to this podcast, I assume, are in the fitness space to some regard, maybe not, but just understanding that, you have the control of it, but it's not going to be an easy journey to learn those habits. It's going to take a long time. It's not going to feel fun. You're going to feel like a loser sometimes, but it's no different than that person in your gym that you were trying to get eating more healthy. And you're like, just don't go out 3 days, three meals on the weekends. Don't go out for 3 meals. And that person's thinking, how could I not go out for 3 meals on the weekends? That's awesome. I'm 38 now, and I will go out for 0 meals per week if I go out, because I just don't want to. And there's been a long journey to get to those places, and you obviously have to grow and mature, but just understanding that, while you do want to spend those extra dollars on, whatever that might be for you, $300 a month, $500 a month out the door, if that's what you plan for, great. But if you didn't, that's going to be your literal, Achilles. That's going to disable you from getting to that next level, whatever that goal is for you. And I'm not talking about, you're never going to have a Lamborghini. You're never going to have, a mansion on the hills. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, are you going to have the peace and the calmness when it comes to having a conversation of, can I just pull my workload back a little bit and spend more time with my grandkids? If you get to that point in life and you're not able to have that peace and calmness around it, and it's filled with anxiety, that's scary to think about. But it's also hard, just like the conversation of type 2 diabetes or anything else. When it's not right in front of us, we don't really care about the consequences. But when it's in front of us, I think that's when it becomes scary. We've all had people come into our gym that have just been recently diagnosed with something medical related, and they're the best workers in the gym because there's no excuses. They're going to work their hardest. They're going to listen to you. But that 22-year-old, when you tell them you're going to have to fix this, this, and this if you don't want to get hurt, I mean, you're probably going to have to just let them learn their own lesson.
You're going to have to save and invest this if you don't want to be poor.
Right.
That's like a hard construct early on because they're like, well, fuck it, I'm poor now, so I might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. And that's the mindset, I think, is something that's hard to get past. But like anything is the mindset should be focused around the habits and behaviors, like Chuck said. And that's really what creates just like a healthy relationship with money. I've been at the place in my life where I don't want to open my bank account. I don't want to see what's going on in there. I'm not happy with, I'm not happy with what's in there. I don't need to see in detail what's happening there because I'm going to be even more upset. And that's just really scary because we think about that as a kid and you're like, I get to make my own money. I had a paper out when I was a kid and I probably made like $20 a week maybe, but like that was my money. I earned that. You can't spend it. Dad's not going to tell me what to do with it. Mom's not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to go buy candy. But like to think about having that kind of relationship with money when you're 65, that would be great. Maybe don't be so carefree as a 13-year-old. You're ready to buy a Snickers, but
Nah, man, that's the goal.
Yeah, that's true.
The
actually,
goal should be like, but like it's, and you see with fitness too, like I think that most people would be fairly shocked with how low time duration and relative overall like exertion, thought, and energy went into either you or I's fitness or nutrition. Because we put an enormous amount of time and energy and effort into those things for a really long period of time where you're like, I've built the behavior and the habit, but I've also created the foundation that allows me to really sit at kind of like this level of maintenance that is far better than the alternative. And it's like, you can do it with your finances. If you're willing to fight hard enough for just long enough, you can potentially be done for the rest of your life. Not there yet. For sure. But like that is very much so the idea is like, can we go hard enough and far enough so that way before 65, we can be like the 13-year-old versions of myself that's like, yeah, I want to buy it. Can I buy it? I can buy it. Cool. We're done here. Like where you don't have to weigh the opportunity cost, where you don't have to think about the downside.
Yeah.
But I think that's what was lost in a lot of the framing for me in discussions around debt, saving, and investing is it was too abstract and still continues to be too abstract for me to think about this old man version of myself, even though like he's very much so quite literally closer than I would ever let myself believe. And he is way more around the corner than like down the street. But I think that was the big stumbling block. And it's kind of like that for fitness is like you're trying to think about making these decisions for these impossibly far off versions of yourself and of life. And like, that's just not how humans work.
Yep.
And I don't have a better answer for it. But what was helpful for me that, plays in favor of the entrepreneur and the self-employed way more is like you get to control that time frame. Even if you are an employee, you still have control over that time frame. It's like, well, choose your hard. You can do a little hard for a super long time, or you can do really, really hard for, probably still longer than you would like, but you can collapse a great amount of that. And the ability to look at like the eventual payout of like compounding interest, not based on the metric of time, but on how much you can grow that nest egg. Compound interest is incredible over time only because like that nut gets so big or that snowball gets so big that it's rolling as effect. But it's like, well, you don't necessarily need to wait that time. If you can get that amount here, the compounding effect still benefits. And it works like that in finances and in nothing else, which is like, that is a unique piece because you can't be so fucking good with your diet and exercise that you never have to really worry about it again. But compounding with your finances, like that is a very real crossover point where if you can stack enough and have somebody smart enough doing good things with it, you could be done forever.
It's trying to disassociate the paycheck you're receiving with everything that you deserve right now, and letting yourself know that I don't deserve 100% of this paycheck right now. My future self deserves some percentage of this. That's hard to do, though. Reconciling, like, I don't deserve all of this. This is, you're charitably giving to yourself later on down the line because you want your future self to be lazy. You want future self to have a little bit of a break. But that's really hard to do. Just like nutrition, getting that under control, getting fitness under control. It's hard to do when you have no source of understanding that you can actually be financially independent and free and comfortable, but it's going to take a while. Just like the person who has dealt with obesity maybe their whole life, they can never see themselves with a 6 or 8 pack. Like that person that lives on social media with a 6 pack or an 8 pack, like that's not a real person to them. That's impossible. But then we've also seen in the CrossFit space that it's actually not impossible. We've seen CrossFit Games athletes with a 6 pack that were former fat kids. And like, that's amazing and incredible, but it speaks to the power of compounding efforts, because that's all financial compounding is. Yeah, we're taking the dollars, but you're able to, the dollars are elsewhere. They're external from your body. So that's why they can compound separately from what your personal effort is. But your personal effort compounding of saving regularly, putting money away regularly, paying your debt down regularly, being smart with your money. And also on top of that, going out and trying to earn more money regularly, whether that's asking your boss, what do I need for promotion, or building the skill set to have, sell a service or a product is really what it comes down to. But time in the market versus time or amount of money in the market is really the biggest factor. It's not how heavy can you deadlift one time. It's how long can you deadlift heavy? Can you do it for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years? You'll probably be the strongest grandpa in the elderly home. If you're like me and Chuck, we're not going to elderly homes. You're going to bury me on my island. I'm going out with the ship.
I will not be in assisted living unless, like, you were talking about hotel concierge is my assisted living. Like, room service is kind of like assisted living. Housekeeper is kind of like assisted living. I want you to assist my living, but I don't want to go over there.
Perfect.
Anyway,
all right.
We're short on time. I could keep chatting with you all day, but I think that we can pick some of that up for like looking at like the markers for where we get the ability for those behaviors to be a little bit better. And so like end on this is if you can get just a little bit of an investment going to where you can see those dollars working in your absence of time and energy. I know for me, that was profoundly impactful to be like, oh, my money made money this week. Even if I didn't do anything, even like, oh, the money is like a perfect little employee that can never call in. It can never be sick. Like it works all day, every day for as long as like I put it in a good role to work. So like if you can just get to, dude, the first time your investment account is like up, $5 or $10. For a lot of people, that is a profoundly life-changing moment to just see like dollars created by other dollars. And then on the saving side, what was helpful for me is getting past the hump of like a convenient, emotional like purchase to where like, it's really hard to play the game of getting savings going when you're like really tempted and toyed with by, $200, $300, $500 purchases. But when you've got, several $1,000s, and we're not talking like crazy money. If you can get like $2,000 in savings to where you're like, oh, by denying myself the easy answer in the moment, like I have a real amount of money now. Like I have money that I can fuck around with and like really do something. I think that's an important metric to get to. So like seeing money make money and also having enough money that you have to really pause and think, be like, it's going in the right direction. Do I want to fuck it up? Anyway, well, thanks for jumping on. This was fun. I like talking money.
Same.
And we will do this definitely at least monthly with Drew, and we've got plenty of content to work with in this one for sure. So thank you for your time, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.
All right, thanks, Lisa, for setting it up.